It's okay. Check, 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 check. Okay, we're good. Right there. And right there. Now it's on me. Okay. Just want to make sure we have audio going. This stream thing is madness. So we've been in a series for a little while now, going through the 10 Commandments, basically trying to bring them down to earth to today's culture, today's relevance, and using the metaphor of a roadmap for life, where basically God gave these 10 commands, his first real commands to mankind about how to stay on the road towards having an abundant life on this earth that he was going to allow us to live on. So today, we come to the 8th commandment, which is from Exodus 20:15, and it says, "You shall not steal." Pretty straightforward. When I was little, my first experience with breaking this commandment, when I was a kid, we used to have a place called Black Star over here on 71st, little arcade that we used to go to as kids. And you'd have to have quarters when you go there to, play the game. And I realized at some point in my young life that when I went to my grandma's house, I was probably like 10 years old maybe, my grandma had a drawer that was like quarter heaven, right? And I discovered this at like 10 and probably played with it in my mind for a little while, but I realized like just one roll of quarters of the 70, 80 roll of quarters that were in her drawer would provide a day at Black Star that was like none other. And so as a little boy, I remember, once in a while I would take a roll of quarters and I would go to Black Star with my friend Mike from Homestead, and we would go. And I just remember like innately inside of me, because it was really the first time I had ever stole something from someone I loved and cared about, that I had this guilt of like, this just isn't right. Like there's something written into our DNA that tells us like taking something from another person is just not right. But I kept doing it. Like I still liked the experience that it brought when I got to Black Star. And so I slowly but surely kind of became numbed to the concept of, hey, she's got 100 of these rolls. It's not that big of a deal. As time goes on, I became older, maybe 15, 16. My sister had one of those big Coke bottle things full of change, top to bottom. And when I was about 15, I started smoking cigarettes. And there was a donut shop here at the corner of Worley where, even as a little kid, you could just walk in there. As long as you had 7 quarters, you can get a pack of cigarettes. So then I'm pouring out her thing every day, getting, quarters. Because at this point, I'm pretty much numb to the concept of, that it's wrong to steal. The more that we do a particular sin, it's kind of like if I hit myself in the arm, it'll hurt for a while, but at some point that arm just becomes numb to the impact. And our conscience is the same way. If we continue in something, we'll become numb. To the point where when I became an adult, I was so numb to the concept that we shouldn't take things from other people that I was doing things that I could have never imagined I was doing what I would end up doing when I was just stealing a little roll of quarters from my grandma in that same regard. And then even when I came to Christ, I come to Christ, so you would think that now I'm set free from the greed and the selfishness that's really the root of why we steal. But as we'll learn today, like it's easier said than done just to completely separate yourself from that heart condition that wants to take or wants things that we don't have. I mean, I haven't literally taken something consciously since I came to Christ from another person, but there are a number of ways that I have cut corners or acted in some way that was a little bit less than perfectly honest in order to save a buck or to, in what is a lifelong struggle within each of us, really, against the lust for things that is really the heart, that condition that God is steering us away from on this particular command. So as with any command that we've gone through so far, we want to start at the very foundational truth of what the command itself reveals. Because each of these last 5 commands that we're going to go through are considered negative commands, right? So they all 5 of them start with, you shall not do this, you shall not do that. But with every one of these negative commands, the last 5, there's a positive statement that God is making that reveals a part of himself to mankind. So when God says, you shall not murder, he shows that he places value on human life, that life is precious to him. That's a positive statement, even though it's a shall not statement. When he says, you shall not commit adultery, he reveals the fact that he values family structure and that he created sex as a sacred and holy reserved thing for the marriage bed. Like, there's a positive statement to be made in these negatives. And here, when he says, you shall not steal, God reveals not only that he desires for us to have personal property that is protected from other people, but also that he has jurisdiction over that property, because in the end, everything belongs to God. Everything. And really, a firm understanding of that principle, that everything belongs to God, and that we are simply stewards of what God releases to us in this journey of life, is the foundation of living a life that is free from greed and selfishness and the never-ending quest for things, and I want that and I need that, until I grasp in my life that I am not the owner of anything that I have in this life. There will always be this low-lying quest for more, or dissatisfaction with what I do have, as if I've been slighted in some way. Like, well, why don't I get to drive a Tesla like these other guys? I work hard to, As long as I think that I've earned anything that I have in some way, there will always be that battle inside of me. And it's just not the most abundant way to live life. And it's why God included this particular command in the 10 commandments towards abundant life. In Psalm 24:1, it says, the earth is the Lord's and everything that's in it. The world and all who live in it are his. 1 Chronicles 29:11 says, yours, O Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the majesty and the splendor, for everything in heaven and earth is yours. Psalm 50:12, this is God speaking. He says, if I were hungry, I would not tell you, because all the world is mine and all that's in it is mine. Earlier in the same psalm, he says, I own the cattle on 1,000 hills. You think I worry about, how things are going to I own everything. It's all mine. The Bible is chock full of verses that proclaim that we actually own or can claim nothing in this life. Like, God gave me my house, God gave me my car, God gave me my stream of income, God gave me my TV, my Netflix, my everything. And so before we go saying like, well, yeah, but I work hard for these things that I have, and nobody gave me nothing, I worked out. The Bible hits on that too. Like Deuteronomy 8:18, it says, but remember the Lord's your God, for it is he who gave you the ability to produce wealth, and so confirms his covenant which he swore to your ancestors as it is today. So he gave me the intellect and the ability, the physical, all of it, no matter how it came about, is a gift from God. Where do we think we get our intellect from? Like, it's from him. It's only by God's grace that I'm even able to think and reason on a level of entrepreneurship or whatever it might be. Like, I have him to thank for that. James 1:17 says, every good and perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father of heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. So if we could really just grasp and believe and live our lives to testify to this one fact, that God is the owner of everything that I have, and that I'm blessed even to be able to steward or enjoy it, then it would change our thankfulness on a daily basis. And therefore, the contentment that I have in my life, it would kill the demon of greed that shipwrecks our life and throws us off the road to abundant life by making us either always longing for, if I only had that bigger TV, or just mired in the fact of hating the fact that what you do have just isn't good enough. God gives this command as one of the 10 guidelines for finding abundant life, because he knows that along this journey of life, there is no more debilitating and demoralizing heart condition than to live with an incessant obsession with everything that we don't have, rather than living with blessed thanksgiving and rejoicing over what it is that we do have. First of all, if we're even hearing this message in America, you can go on a website. It's called howrichami.com. Just being in, if we were completely poor living in America, we're in the top 6% of the, so I'm richer than 94% of the world. If I was completely broke and broken down living in America, 94% of the world, I'm still richer than. So we've gone a long way in America to feel like we're somehow slighted by whatever. And you've definitely met both kinds of people in your life, I'm sure. You know people, nothing will ever be enough. Like no matter what blessing they get, they always look at like, yeah, you know, they gave me a free pie, but there wasn't even no whipped cream on it. It's just like whatever happens in their life, they will find the thing that's just wrong, why it isn't good enough. And also, you know people, or you met people along the way who give you the sense that if the whole house imploded and their entire world went to hell in a handbasket, they would be sitting there peacefully saying, the Lord will provide. He giveth, everything I got's his. He taketh away, and he'll make it work again. I know people like that. I wish I was more like that. Hopefully teaching this message will convict my heart to do that. But pay close attention in your life to your own affinity for the things that you have, and you would be able to test your spirit as to whether you really trust God or not, or if it's just about the acquisition of things and pleasure. When something major is lost in your life or in my life, with no hope for regaining it, like it's gone, do we rage against the people around us like, you left it in the car and that's why it's, you know, or do we turn to God and just say, okay, God, I no longer have that iPhone. You brought the iPhone. God giveth the iPhone. God taketh the iPhone away. Like, but I'll trust that, you know, I need a phone. You know, how do we respond when things like that happen? Is it all about the thing and I'm like yelling at everyone, or do I just trust that God is in control? Or if we don't have something that we legitimately need in our lives, do we start cutting corners ethically or morally to just make it happen? Or do we trust in God, who owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, to just know if I do the right thing consistently, I can't have wrong results. If I just be honest and I do the right thing, it will end up in a place where he'll give me what it is that I need for this journey of life. Because God has loaned us everything that we have. So if my knee-jerk reaction is to whine about all the stuff that I don't have, it reveals the fact that what I do have, I consider to be my own doing. And trust in him becomes impossible in tough times because I think I'm the one that earned that iPhone, and I have to trust in my own ability to produce another one. Things are a very great mirror for how we're doing in this walk. Like God will use things along this journey of life to test our hearts in a myriad of different ways and reveal to ourselves our true selves in order to create the kind of repentance and heart change necessary to get back on the roadmap to abundant life. God gives us things as he chooses to, so that we might manage and enjoy them while he's entrusted it to him. But there's no guarantee in a treasure that's borrowed from somebody else. Like the borrower fully has the right to pull that back if he feels like we're not handling that the way that he would want us to handle it. Like I can't complain if somebody gives me a car and then they say, hey, you know what, I'm going to need that car back because you keep getting in accidents and stuff, and I can't get mad. He gave me the car in the first place. And additionally, God holds back from us some of the things that we might desperately desire in this life if he knows that possessing that thing would somehow hurt us in the long run or move us away from him. And that's just logical. Like, wouldn't any good father just do that? Why would my kids ask me for stuff all day, every day? I don't just give my kids everything that they ask for, because there's some stuff that they ask for that isn't for their best interest. And so if I'm asking and I'm asking and I'm asking God for this or for that or like help me with this, and it's not coming, there's a very logical, very real reason why. It's the fact that he's a good father who wants me to have all that I need in this roadmap of life. And if it's not coming, just trust the fact that there's a reason and he knows better. I remember when I first came home, and I prayed a prayer because my whole life back in the day was based on this, just the addiction to things and things and things. And it was part of what led me to Christ, because I would buy a brand new awesome watch, and it would be great for a day, and then I'd realize, like, man, the new model came out, and then I would be working hard to go get that. Like, it was never-ending lust for things that never fulfilled. It was part of what led me to Christ. Like, if nothing in this world has the capacity to fill the hole in my heart, doesn't that just logically say that maybe I'd have to look outside of this world in order to find it? That was the basis of my salvation prayer. So when I came home, I remember definitively my first prayer when I came home was this: God, I pray that you would never give me $1 more than my faith can handle, because money has been a thing for me. And I don't know where this road's going when I come back out into the real world, but don't ever give me $1 more than the faith that I happen to have at that point can handle. And I can testify that he's been very faithful to that. You know what I mean? Like, just making things happen. I remember when I first came home, looking for a job was crazy. I mean, I had this crazy, it was like, how am I even going to find a job with this record and this, I have no experience of working ever. I'm like 30 years, but if I just commit to doing the right thing day by day, God will provide. And sure enough, he provided some job at this warehouse out in Bedford Heights, Sherwood Foods, right? But it was a humbling job for someone who had lived the high life of, making easy money all day, every day. It was humbling. It was hard work in a warehouse. And the whole thing with Sherwood was that if you work 3 years on that 3-year anniversary, you get a $5 raise. So that's what everybody in the building's shooting for, right? At 2 years and about 8 months, I'm just about to get it. I'll be making some pretty decent money, enough to like support a family, A man from Youth for Christ approaches me and says, here's the deal. I want to give you the opportunity to preach in all the inner city public schools throughout the city, and I can get you in each of these schools and tell your story and lead people to Christ, and But the catch is, it's during the day. You got to do it from 10 a.m. to 2, and you don't get paid anything. And so it was one of those times where it's like, okay, God, like, do I really trust that you'll just provide? Like, my parents are looking at me like, dude, are you crazy? You can't just not work. Like, you can't just. And I said, God, I trust you with this, and I know that you'll handle it. I started preaching in the schools. That led to a church planting organization approaching me about starting a church. Basically, the long story is, God provided this entire path from coming home with nothing but shower shoes to my name. He provided this entire path to where he made sure I had what I needed. God's provision has always been absolutely amazing. And it's been amazing just watching him do all of that from impossible circumstances of starting from scratch, utter scratch. It's led me to a place where I can definitively say that my Father is going to handle it, period. Like, no matter how ridiculous the need that comes up is, I've watched him move mountains to provide and make sure that me and my family have what we need to just keep on trucking, with a firm grasp on the gravity of what God did. First of all, reaching into a prison and transforming the heart of a hopeless wretch like me, and then paving the stones each and every step of the way towards putting me back on my feet financially, and just, all those sorts of things. Do you really think I'm going to sweat it when, like, the water heater breaks down? Like, oh no, oh Lord, like, whatever are we going to do? The water heater I've watched God move mountains to restore my entire life and put me where he needed to put me and provide what he needed to provide. So worrying about the petty things is just gone, and I thank him for that. So long as everything that he does give me, I hold with open palms. He will always provide, and I know it now. And even that which he doesn't provide, I can know from past experience that he is good. And he wants what's best for me. And so there's a very real reason why he's holding back whatever it is he holds back when I don't have some of the things that I watch other people enjoy and have. For those who have accepted Christ and obeyed him in this way, when it comes to things specifically, it is the opposite heart condition of the heart of the thief that he describes here, the heart of the stealer. Because those who steal have, in essence, accepted Satan into their heart. It is a distinguishable, dividing line between the enemy and God, that the core attribute of the enemy is to take, while the core attribute of God is to give. The enemy came to steal, kill and destroy. God so loved the world that he gave his only son. It's his core attribute to be a giver. The enemy's is as a taker. So when we steal, or if we become takers rather than givers in this life, we align ourselves with the very nature of Satan and become enemies of God in that heart condition of greed and selfishness and take. How can I beat the system? How can I? That's a satanic mindset. So I just want to hit on two things today. One, how could this 8th commandment be a motivation to us in this journey of life? And in what ways do we violate this command in our daily life in this day and age? So first off, the 8th commandment should motivate us to live by the ethic of honest and hard work in this journey of life. Like, God knows us from the inside out, and so each of these commands, even when they may seem like just strict rules from a strict father, they are all designed for our own best interest. He knows us. And an honest, hard day's work is an experience that I didn't get to experience till I was darn near in my 40s. Because the world sold me the idea that easy money was good money, like when I was a kid, but there is something inside of a man, and I'm assuming it's inside of a woman as well, that is activated or fulfilled when we put in an honest, hard day's work and we produce something with the labor of our hands and our mind, and it supports our family. There's just something about that versus the easy money of my old life. It just didn't fulfill that part of my heart. And it's a far, far more enriching and empowering and fulfilling experience than anything I felt in the world getting quick money on the streets. Like, God made us, and so he knows us better than anyone, that stealing our way through life or living off the system or borrowing off Peter to pay Paul or whatever it might be is simply not the type of lifestyle that will guide us on a roadmap to abundant life, period. We weren't designed that way. It keeps us perpetually running on the hamster wheel of poverty and just makes our core nature that of takers rather than givers or producers like our Father. And it's not his plan for us, period. Our parents and our grandparents, people in this room, matter of fact, understood this principle far better than my generation. Like, the generations whose calloused hands built this country from the ground up and had a more simplistic sense of joy and happiness in the little things that this generation, even my generation, will never get to experience because it's been erased from our culture. I feel that the entitlement society that we now live in was dawned in my generation, because I grew up with the first notions of work if you want to, but if not, we'll take care of you, it's all good. The actual mindset that was planted in my head growing up right here on Worley Avenue was that the working man was a sucker and that the man who works the system was the player, you know what I'm saying, that moves the pieces and does his own thing. Thank God for God's word that flooded in to show me that the suckers are the ones who spin their tires in a lifetime stuck in the same cycle of reliance upon others or upon this world or its systems, while real men don't talk about things that might happen or hope for things to happen one day, but they actually go and make it happen with their own two hands. Income redistribution of any kind is stealing, because it not only takes from the diligent to give to the indigent, but it also robs people of the opportunity to get on the roadmap to abundant life by experiencing the inner satisfaction of having worked hard and achieved something with the labor of their own hands. It's stealing. Now, this obviously doesn't apply to, seasons of life that God gives us for rest, retirement, an injury that sidelines us or just genuinely searching for work and not being able to find it. But let it be clear that income redistribution of any kind is a form of stealing if I could be producing for myself, but I'm just searching for an easy way to kind of beat the system. It's stealing. We will never beat God. We could try to beat the system. We ain't going to beat God. So those wages that we gather in our laziness will be wages of sin that we pay for down the road. Trust and believe. Our fundamental bent as people should be to give it all that we got in this life and trust God with the results of our labor rather than get all that we can trusting in the systems that the world sets up for support. And the Bible's clear about this. Like 2 Thessalonians 10 says, "For even while we were with you, we gave you this command. If anyone's unwilling to work, he shall not eat." 1 Timothy 5:8 says, "If anyone does not provide for his own, and especially for his own household, he has denied his own faith and is worse than an unbeliever." So God is serious about this principle of working hard and producing with our own hands for what we receive in this life. Ephesians 4:28 says, "He who has been stealing must steal no longer, but must work, doing good with his own hands, that he may have something to share with the one in need." And that verse right there, that's the key. It presents God's entire plan for those who genuinely do need support and assistance in order to not have to steal in some of the ways I just described. God's biblical plan for helping to support those who are genuinely unable to do so for a season is that we, the church, are supposed to be the ones who work hard and labor and then are generous to the point that to such a degree that we're able to help those who are genuinely having a season of need where they need help and need a leg up and need some assistance to move to the next stage of life. That's it. That was God's system for the whole thing. Did you know that just with the money that Christians worldwide spend on ice cream in 1 year, we could end world hunger? So if we gave up ice cream for 1 year, Christians worldwide, the money that would be saved by Christians would then be able to end world hunger. Is that a crazy statistic? Let alone if we as Christians were actually giving the 10% tithe that God asked from us. Whether we gave it to our churches and then the church budgets would reflect the proper commitment to outreach, or if we just take part of that tithe out to just tangibly help people that we see around us in need in our life. We are God's design system for meeting the needs of a needy world around us. Not the government, or some other agency. We're supposed to be the answer to the neediness around us. But if people are whoever you serve, whoever you go to, that's who you serve. You can't serve two masters. The Bible says you cannot serve two masters. So if the government is who I look to in times of need, it's who I trust in when things get rough, then where does that leave God, the true provider? Where does that leave his church, who's been called to actually be the answer to the neediness in our world for things that people actually need? The Bible even says that this generosity that we show with the things that we've been given is the tool that God will use to bring the entire world to Christ. That they would see your good deeds and how you love others, and as a result, they would give glory to the God whose people act in that way. Not giving a tithe from the income that we produce is the surest way to know that. Deep down, we do not believe that God's the author of all the good things that come into my life. Period. I can know definitively when I really believe that or when I don't, based upon do I give what he's at. Because I believe that God is the owner of everything. And I am simply a steward, of what he blesses me to happen to have for any given moment. If I believe that, then I will give with open hands even more abundantly than 10%, because when he leads me to do so, I know he provided in the first place. He'll refill the tank. And I've heard a lot of people on that particular topic of tithing say, well, that's Old Testament talk. We live under grace now, and tithe is, But if you look at any of these commandments that God gives, right? when they bring it up to Jesus, he doesn't cut it back a couple percent. Jesus actually amps up each one of the commands of God from the Old Testament. Like the Old Testament just says, hey, you shall not murder. They ask Jesus about it. He actually asks more of us and says, yeah, that's great, but you can't even hate people, or you shall not commit adultery. Jesus asks more of us and says, you can't even lust after a woman or else you're adulterant in your, like Jesus actually asks more. So in the subject of tithe, why would it suddenly be like, well, that's an old thing. God doesn't ask that much of it. I would say he asks more, to be honest. Now, since we started this series with every commandment that I've gone through, I'm sure there's been some weeks where we come in like, well, I'm good on that one. Like I'm safe this week. I haven't killed nobody. It doesn't apply to me. I'll listen, maybe to tell my friends about it, but, this one doesn't apply to me. And then I stand up here and I paint some picture of how we've all broken that commandment. So I apologize that that's kind of the way that this is going, but it's important to know where we are in life before we can ever formulate a vision of like, where are we going in this life? I believe that God is calling us to do a very new thing here at Jones Road in these years to come. And a new thing, a new movement of God cannot be founded upon anything but brutal honesty and absolute truth, or else it will not have the legs to produce the fruit that he's called us to produce in this community, both with ourselves and with each other. So bear with me as I'll rattle off a couple other ways that we break this commandment of stealing without even knowing it. I don't think anyone in this room has ever, in the past however long, literally walked in and taken something from someone else, but it's the spirit that God's after. When he says do not murder, Jesus says hatred. It's the spirit of the law that I'm after. I'm after your heart, not what your hands happen to do. And here's some of them. Plagiarism is one that I see on social media all the time, like quoting somebody from some genius book that I'm reading that I know other people aren't reading and will never know, that it's this guy's quote, but posting it as if I'm the genius for the day. You know what I'm saying? That is stealing. It's stealing from the person who had that concept and God gave, that the credit for that, that's stealing. Stealing of someone's innocence is something that I've counseled families on before. When someone did something or exposed a young person to something that in some way, shape, or form stole the innocence of their childhood from them, that's a form of stealing. We steal dignity from people, and we steal people's reputation when we gossip about them, whether things are untrue or things that are actually true, but we just bring it up in random conversations just to bring down or steal the reputation of the person that we're gossiping about. I've never heard more gossip in my life until I came to Christ and entered the church. It would amaze me just in prayer circles how people would just put people's life on blast to say, oh, pray for Sister Martha who's cheating on her husband and having, and it'd be like, whoa, man, they would use this, what's supposed to be a sanctified thing, as a way to just gossip and pull someone's name down. Stealing the glory for something is one of the ways that I see commonly, on the internet, stealing God's glory. I was tempted in this very early in my ministry. When I first came to Christ and there was, we were starting the church and the SBC's putting us on magazine covers and the Cleveland Magazine thing, there was all this pressure to build this incredible ministry that, and God would do these things that were utterly God, like somebody possessed would have a radical conversion right before our eyes, and I would immediately be posting it on Facebook and getting PR and look what Forward's doing, look how we changed lives. Look, in the end, what did I do? I had nothing to do with any, but I'm taking the glory that should be God's and applying it in my own life or to my own ministry to amp up things and make them look more grandiose than they really are. Premarital sex is another one. It's stealing something that doesn't belong to you. It's not yours. Borrowing something without returning. How many rakes do I have in my shed right now that some neighbor gave me in 1997 that I'd never returned, even though I know it's not mine? Withholding something from someone that they rightfully own. People do this to me in business all the time. If I do a job, then it becomes a thing like, well, now I got to hunt down the money for the job. Like they know that it's right. That's stealing until we make it right. Making false claims about a product or about a thing or trying to boost things up. I've faced that temptation constantly in my, trying to make, the system sound better than it is or whatever it might be. So I don't know if any of these apply to you or your situation that you might find yourself now. But the bottom line of today's message is really just this, that God wants all of us to have an abundant and fulfilling journey on this road of life. And this command not to steal is simply a warning sign on the side of the road that if we fall in love with the things of this world rather than the author of this world, we have no destination to go to except dissatisfaction and discontentment and an incessant heart that needs and yearns for more, and it's never, ever enough. See the things in your life as gifts from God that may come or go as seasons pass in life, but that He blesses us to be able to steward and enjoy them, even if it's just for a time. There is no lasting happiness to be found in this world, in the relentless hunger for things of this world. I know it from firsthand testimony. It just doesn't deliver. The things of this world are petty trinkets compared to the treasures that God gives you of inner contentment and peace no matter what you own. True happiness and lasting joy come from thankfulness for what we have and trust in the Father that the things that we don't have been kept from us for a very good fatherly reason. There is peace in that is incomparable to what my old watch brought me. Working towards this kind of mindset will completely tear out the roots of greed and selfishness and discontentment, and they will plant in their place seeds of peace and contentment that will put us back on the roadmap to abundant life. That's God's plan for us, that we don't have to live in a constant condition of neediness or begging or whatever it might be, but that we would have the gumption to work hard and be honest and trust Him with the results. God, I thank You for your word. Pray that Your word goes forth today, Lord, that in any way that this may apply to us, our current practices, our current ways of doing things. Lord, I know there's a couple things that came up just in my study of this that I definitely do, God, and never really thought too much about. I've been numbed in those areas, evidently. And I would just pray that we would look at this very closely just to know the areas, Lord, where we are less than honest or have that heart of greed or cutting corners, Lord, because in the end, the world is looking at us, Lord, and how we do things. All of them are cutting corners. All of them are doing crooked things to get ahead, and they lust for things and all day, every day. But if they could see a contrast in our lives that we don't operate that way, that we're content even in the most meager of circumstances, and we don't whine and we don't beg and we don't, Lord, that would be an impact on them that would produce fruit for generations to come, Lord. So help us to be those kind of people that are so anti when it comes to the things of this world, Lord, that the contrast between us and the world is noticed and that people move forward